We'll have a first plenary keynote address today, right now. I would like to invite Vinod Tahiliani, the CFO of Reliance BP Mobility Limited, talking on the energy transition challenge. Vinod, as the CFO on behalf of BP in the Reliance BP joint venture for mobility solutions, Vinod is at the forefront of the energy transition for mobility customers. Their solutions range from traditional petrol, diesel, clean compressed natural gas, compressed biogas, as well as electric charging. Before this, Vinod led the India Gas Solutions, another Reliance BP joint venture, which offered innovative solutions to grow the Indian gas market. And in a career spanning over 3 decades, Vinod has developed and grown businesses with a strong commercial acumen. With BP, he has a rich and varied global experience in oil and gas over 2 decades. Vinod has started working across exploration projects, producing assets, and LNG gas value chain businesses across countries and diverse cultures. Before BP, Vinod specialized in project finance, infrastructure advisory for power, oil and gas, and infrastructure projects with a leading bank in India. Vinod is a mechanical engineer from Mumbai University and an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Vinod?
Really inspired to hear the poem, and really pleased to be here among a lot of people who are, shall we say, building a better tomorrow for all of us. So looking forward to hearing all your success stories. But what I'm here to talk about today is the challenge that Dipanvita alluded to, the challenge of the transitioning the energy system of the world into cleaner forms of energy and the role that BP is playing in this transition. Before I kind of talk to you about what role BP does, let's for a moment look at what is the nature of this challenge. We all know that while we are all aware of climate change, the carbon budget is really running out. A lot of net zero targets have been announced by various companies, countries. India has said net zero by 2070, or we as BP said 2050 or sooner. But the action, and a lot of action has also been taking place. A lot of policies have been set by the governments across the world. The latest being the Inflation Reduction Act in the US to incentivize more creation of cleaner forms of energy. But the fact is, CO2 emissions have increased every year since Paris, other than 2020, and we all know reason why in 2020, and we hope that never happens again. So the scale of the challenge suggests that greater support, greater ideas, greater innovation is required to make sure that we are able to tackle this challenge and to facilitate, for example, quicker processing, approval of low carbon energy infrastructure. Also, it's very important to realize that this is not something which can be solved at a global level. The challenges and the answers are very specific to each country. For example, if you look at, and we were talking, Satya and I a little while ago, that while oil may have peaked in Europe, oil is yet to peak in India or in any of the growing economies around the world. And the reason for that is we still need to grow the wealth of our people, the per capita income of our people to levels where it becomes comfortable for them. And to be able to do that, access to energy is important. Access to energy which is secure, which is affordable, and which is sustainable. So herein there's a trilemma. It's like a 3-legged stool, and as all of us know, unless all the 3 legs of the stool are equal, it will never balance. So that's what the challenge we need to address, and it has to be a just transition. The energy systems of the world are too complex to try and do this as an on-off switch. It's not something, while an individual can choose that, yes, I will change from a petrol car to a EV car tomorrow. But for the globe to actually do that, the amount of investment that will be needed to do that rapidly is just not available. So it has to be a transition which happens over time, as a just transition. Also, you need to make sure that you are skilling up people such that they come along with you on this transition and not leaving people behind. So these are some of the thoughts. Especially security has been heightened by the recent geopolitical events, and a lot of focus is now being put on how to reduce import dependence and make sure that you grow and invest your domestic sources of energy. If you see, part of the reason why in India we are focusing on renewable energy is because that's local, and that's true for most countries. Now, how do you utilize that resource, and how do you enable that transition is important. One small thing which we also need to remember is that it's very important while we are doing this to focus also on energy efficiency, because in a way that energy which you save is free energy. If I look at, can I have the next slide please? We in BP, we prepare an energy outlook every year. We look at this from the point of view of trying to plan our own strategies for a range of outcomes that could occur. And we share it widely with everybody. It's available on our website on bp.com. You can download it, download the report, download the tables, all the data. It's quite an intense exercise. But what we try to do here is to look at a range of possible pathways out into the future and how will the energy system change. We've defined these as 3 scenarios: new momentum, accelerated, and net zero. These are not, first of all, I must put the health warning out there, they are not predictions of the future. We don't know what's going to happen, we don't have a crystal ball. We also don't define a base case for precisely that region. We rather look at it, there are a range of possibilities, and what will occur will depend on how all of us, all the stakeholders involved, governments, policymakers, industry, the common people, all of us act on these things. So, if I look at new momentum, it is designed to capture the broad trajectory along which we are currently traveling. It looks at and places weight that we have an increased ambition to decarbonize in the recent years, as well as how we are going about decarbonizing and what is our success rate in that. But as seen on the slide, you can see that while carbon emissions for the globe are expected as per this scenario to peak somewhere in the 2020s, by 2050 they are around 30% lower than 2019 levels. Which, if you look at what we are aspiring to as a, 2 degrees C or a 1.5 degrees C target is not enough. Accelerated and net zero are essentially what-if scenarios. So what would you need to believe if you wanted to achieve a 75% reduction or a 95% reduction in the CO2 emissions relative to 2019 levels by 2050? What elements of the energy system might need to change if the world takes collective action through significant tightening in climate policies, as well as, especially for net zero, a shift in societal behaviors and preferences to support the gains in energy efficiency and adopt low carbon energy. So that's what you would need to believe for those scenarios to come about. So with this backdrop, all of us will acknowledge that this is a huge challenge. So how has BP responded to this challenge? Can I have the next slide, please? BP, we announced, and lot of the people out there are skeptics, and rightfully so. You know, we are an oil and gas company, or have been at least for most of our life, which contributes to the carbon emissions significantly. But in 2020, we announced a new purpose, which was to reimagine energy for our people and our planet, supported by a new ambition, which was to be net zero by 2050 or sooner. And this is net zero across our operations, whatever we produce and whatever we sell. So it's not just our operations. So we are in a journey to transform BP to produce energy that's secure, affordable, and increasingly lower carbon. Because, as I said, it cannot happen overnight, while continuing to produce the energy the world needs today. From an international oil company, we are transitioning to an integrated energy company, which focuses on delivering solutions to customers. And we see ourselves playing a key role in helping the world make this transition. We believe there's a need to do both: invest to grow cleaner forms of energy, as well as continue investments to deliver hydrocarbons to meet the growing energy demand of the customers and ensure as smooth a transition as possible. I mean, just as an example, during the UK crisis, you had a relatively small percentage of the global oil and gas production capacity from Russia, which did not find a market, but the prices went through the roof. So that is how fragile the whole commodity markets are in terms of the impact any of these disruptions can have. And when prices went through the roof, it had all kinds of impacts which impacted the lives of all of us. So how do we actually make sure that this transition is as smooth as possible is quite important. As seen on this slide, at BP, we developed a 3-pillar strategy. Resilient hydrocarbons, which says that we will continue to provide the world with the oil and gas that it needs. And you know, which some of you may or may not know, as an extractive industry, I cannot guarantee that I will continue producing the same amount of oil and gas from a field today that I did yesterday. It goes down over time. So just to keep it constant needs continuous investment. In addition to that, you know, demand for energy is growing. And as I said, developing economies continue to demand more oil and gas. The second pillar is convenience and mobility, which is how do you transform the way the whole mobility industry moves towards low carbon, and also in the low carbon energy production business. With 5 transition growth engines around biofuels, convenience, electric charging, renewables and power, and hydrogen. And since 2020, we have made considerable progress, and we have several examples which show that we are headed in the right direction. JIOBP, which is a 50% BP company, is a global leader in solar energy, has grown our renewables pipeline to around 25 gigawatts, including 5 gigawatts in offshore wind, where we believe we are uniquely placed to bring our offshore skill sets to play. We are also a large biogas producer in the US today through our acquisition of Archaea Energy, and we are growing our biogas presence across the world. We are leading the development of the Asian Renewable Energy Hub in Western Australia, which will produce 26 gigawatts of wind and solar power, and which could then be used to produce 1.6 million tons of hydrogen or 9 million tons of ammonia, depending on if you want to use it locally or you want to ship it around the world. And just, you know, today if you look at the demand for grey hydrogen in India is about 4 to 5 million tons. So 1.6 million tons will be huge. We are investing in EV charging networks across the world in India, China, Australia, Europe and US, with over 22,000 charging points installed and a target to have over 100,000 by 2030. 3,000 plus of those are in India, and if I look at our plans in India, we could be doing those 100,000 all in India. So as we are delivering and making progress towards our net zero ambition, we are leaning further into our strategy and investing more. Earlier this year, we said we announced that we will invest up to $8 billion more in the transition growth engines by 2030 and another $8 billion in oil and gas by 2030. So it's very much an and strategy, such that we provide the world with the energy it needs today and tomorrow. So some of our beliefs for the energy transition are that as the structure of energy demand changes, share of fossil fuels will decline and will be replaced by a growing share of renewable energy and increasing electrification. What is important is that oil and gas will remain part of the energy mix, and the time horizons by which it will move out or will decline will vary by regions. For example, again, India will see petrol demand, we think, peak by mid-2030s compared to, say, some of the Western world where it probably has already peaked, and diesel demand by late 2030s. So, and this is just peak, it's not that it will disappear. The world will need a range of other energy sources and technology, including low carbon hydrogen, modern bioenergy, and carbon capture, use and storage, some of which we don't have today, especially, or don't have it in a viable form today. So, customers will also redefine mobility as their aspirations grow, their incomes grow, and there's an increasing trend such as shared mobility, autonomous vehicles, which are changing the way we look at mobility and will hopefully bring a cleaner future in the mobility space as well. So turning now to India and India's energy transition challenge. If you can go to the next slide. Probably one more. India, if you look at India, and this is the same chart you saw for the globe for India across the three scenarios. India is 14% of global primary energy consumption today. And given its size, demographics and growth, it will need all forms of energy to meet its needs of its economy. Energy security, affordability and access are the key imperatives as we look to attain energy independence, Atmanirbharta, by 2047 as announced by Mr. Shri Modi. And we have also announced very ambitious climate change targets and, as I said, aim to be net zero by 2070, all of it underpinned by just transition. So a lot of things has been done by India. We have grown our renewable capacity, energy capacity significantly over the last decade, or especially in the last 5 years. We are adding something like up to 40 gigawatts a year of renewable capacity in the best year. And 14 gigawatts a year. So let's just say 40. And also we are pursuing very aggressively biofuels. We are already at 12% blending of ethanol into petrol with an aim to reach 20% by 2025. We have launched a scheme to increase biogas production from agricultural and municipal solid waste called SATAT. It's a mouthful, it stands for Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation. So with these imperatives, we are looking to, actually reduce our carbon emissions. And of course, we are all aware of the National Hydrogen Mission, which has been announced, the green hydrogen policy, and how we are looking to grow the green hydrogen space. But despite all these efforts, if you look at the new momentum scenario, which factors in all of this, and success in all of, and what success we believe is possible in all of this, the carbon emissions for India are set to rise. Even as, and even as per the black dot on the chart is what is the government target by 2030 for carbon emissions. So even if they achieve that, even then it's set to rise. And much more is needed to, shall we say, bend the curve. the pathways for accelerated and net zero could, for example, require a multiple increase in the renewable capacity addition from the current 14 gigawatts, and also a faster growth in biofuels and hydrogen. For example, for net zero, I think from 14 you'll have to grow it to 40 gigawatts a year. So that's again the size of the challenge for India. And why, why is this, why is India not doing more, you could argue. But the point is we are still growing. We still need to pull our people out of poverty. We still need to make sure that everybody has access to energy and the right opportunities. So that's the challenge before the government. If you go to the next slide, please. So this chart kind of talks about the fact, the chart on the left, that in one way of looking at it, the entire global energy demand growth out to 2050 comes from India, because the increases in all the other parts of the world is offset by declines in OECD. So that's how important India is in the energy market, and consequently, in how we are acting on this energy transition challenge. So, with the doubling of energy demand in India, the path to rapid electrification will be key if we have to achieve our climate goals. 75% of growth has to come from electrification, with 50% of India's final energy consumption being electrified by 2047, and largely from renewable clean sources, for us to achieve our climate goals. Also, we'll need to accelerate the build out of low carbon hydrogen, where, what is important is, as we move forward, we put in place schemes where we have demand mandates coupled with the production linked incentives that the government is offering today. Because today it seems to be, yes, you have production linked incentives which promote the production of hydrogen, but there is no demand mandate which goes alongside with it, such that you can keep pushing the technology forward and keep moving towards a place where hydrogen production can become viable and compete with grey hydrogen. So basically, with electrification and a rapid growth in renewables, we could enable a faster reduction in fossil fuel imports, which is the chart on the right hand side. And the share of imported energy could fall from around a third now to around a tenth by 2047. But as you can see, fossil fuels will still be needed to meet the energy needs in India, with natural gas almost riding threefold between 2019 and 2047. Of course, it's cleaner than coal, 50% cleaner. And coal demand rising around 15% and oil by 20%. So, really speaking, we will, as I said before, need all forms of energy, and all of them will grow while we address this challenge. And what we need, therefore, is investment in fossil fuels and investment in low carbon energy. And fossil fuels, if we can make carbon capture and storage viable, will be key to help India deliver its goal of net zero by 2070. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but okay, I'll try and wrap it up quickly. Very quickly, if I move to the next slide. In India as well, we as BP are participating across all our strategic pillars and transition growth engines. We are, producing gas in partnership with Reliance offshore the east coast of India. Currently our production is about a third of the domestic production in the country. We meet 15% of India's gas demand through our domestic production. We have, and I'll just pull out some highlights rather than going through in detail. At JIOBP, the brand for Reliance BP Mobility Limited, we have launched an additivized diesel which offers 4.3% increased fuel efficiency as per our claim, which has been verified and tested. In real practice, we are seeing people achieve even higher fuel efficiency, which again helps reduce the emissions to that extent. And this is being offered not as a premium advertised fuel, but as the normal fuel at the normal pump price. We are also invested in the Green Growth Equity Fund of the Government of India. We've contributed 70 million to that fund, and through that we are growing our presence in the renewables and the low carbon space. Collaboration is actually the need of the hour. With we needing collaborations between industry, policymakers and academia to encourage this transition, and of course, innovators like you. At BP we are, looking at working with several academic institutions, IIT Bombay, on a program on defining pathways to transition heavy industry, the hard-to-abate sectors of steel, cement, etc., to low carbon or a lower carbon future. Identifying opportunities in the renewable energy value chain in partnership with IIM Ahmedabad. Building an industry, academia, government research consortium in support of energy transition with IIT Delhi, and funding the Council on Energy, Environment and Water to do a techno-economic analysis to help build a regulated carbon market in India. And before I close, we also have a ventures arm which was established more than 10 years ago and has invested over $1 billion in 65 companies, over 65 companies, with around 40 currently active in our portfolio. What is different is we are often both the investor and end user of the technologies that we invest in. We invest in funding rounds right from seed to late stage growth. I don't understand these terms, so you guys probably do better than me. And we focus our efforts currently on carbon management, advanced mobility, power and storage, bio and low carbon products, intelligent commodities and digital transformation. Couple of examples, one of our companies, Sea Capture, has patented a unique solvent-based technology which offers a safe, low-cost way to remove carbon dioxide from emissions using a post-combustion capture approach. And FreeWire has developed a powerful battery-integrated ultra-fast DC charger for EVs, which can be set up without costly construction within 2 hours of downtime at a forecourt. And in India, we have invested in 2 companies, Blue Smart, a EV passenger ride-hailing fleet, and Magenta, a three-wheeler freight movement company in this space, in the advanced mobility space, and are also supporting them by providing them with access to charging through Reliance BP Mobility Limited. So that gives you an overview of how we are working with India. In summary, I would say I believe India is uniquely positioned to make this transition to cleaner energy with all our efforts, while continuing to provide affordable energy for upliftment and development of our people. And we are proud to partner India on this journey, bringing our experience, technology and global scale. Thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartuptv.